Why don't we start with the basics? What
Yes.
is your mission with the Confess Project?
So the Confess Project is a nonprofit organization that supports barbers and stylists to be mental health advocates. We've trained over 3,000 barbers and stylists across 52 cities in 35 states on this model that allows them to be great listeners, to support their clients, and also to support their communities. This model is ongoing and continually growing in regards of mental health advocacy and how they are able to provide value to their friends and neighbors in their communities. Really ensuring that stigma is reduced and that people are having the best quality of life that they deserve.
Um, do you remember the moment when you came up with the idea for the Confess Project?
Yeah, yeah, it was. I remember in particular getting my college degree. I was ecstatic because I had really beat the odds of. You're talking about a kid who had been formerly incarcerated, that didn't live with his mother and father, born in jail to an incarcerated mother, losing his father at the age of 10, staying with relatives, not knowing my siblings well, being a part of gangs. When I graduated college, it was one of those iconic feelings because I didn't imagine me living to see that long, or rather, I thought I would be in jail.
Mm.
And being that I made it to that moment, I also knew that there was just a deeper calling. So I found myself grappling with how could I really show up more than what I had been able to accomplish for self. And so I met a friend that was in the nonprofit space and that gave me encouragement to really share my story, and I really dug deep and started to explore what that would look like. You're talking about someone who had never done public speaking, no one who had really ever done any kind of community organizing, any kind of civic engagement work. I had no idea what any of that stuff really meant. I was just grateful to not be dead or be in jail. And
How old were you?
at that time, I was 20, maybe 24, 25. Yeah, getting right out of college, 25, no more than 26 at the most.
I think
And
this is a really important part of your story, Lorenzo, and it's one of the reasons why I tracked you down. I said we have to get this man on the Mel Robbins podcast because your story to me is an example that no matter who you are, what background you have, what education you have or you don't have, what family support, what trauma, any of it, that anyone, including you listening to us, can make
yes,
a decision that you're going to try to make a difference, that you're going to make a decision that you're going to either leave your community, your family, the world around you a little bit better place. And so here you are, and we're going to get into your story in just a minute. But here you are, you have beaten the odds, you have graduated from college, you have met somebody in the nonprofit space, and they're encouraging you to share your story about how you were able to graduate from college, how you were able to overcome the odds that were stacked against you. And in this moment where somebody is basically saying to you, dude, you got a lot that you could share with people, it hits you that you want to do more. And so, how did you connect the dots between barbers and mental health?
really good question, and I have a really good answer. Well, I grew up. My aunt, who took me in as a young, I was months old when my mother was incarcerated after she had birth, and I was one step between going into the foster care system. And they stepped in. They drove all the way from Little Rock, Arkansas, to Newark, New Jersey, to ensure that I did not go in the system of foster care. And my aunt also was a beautician. So as you can imagine, growing up, I went to the beauty shop every day, and that was just a part of life. From the time I was able to go to school. When I got off the school bus, I went to the beauty shop. That's where I did my homework in the evenings. That's where it was a many time we had dinner in the beauty shop because that's where she was working late. This is where it was a huge part of my life every day. But I was also a mentor there by a guy named Sylvester. He was the only barber there. It was about five operators there. So out of four was women, and he was the one male barber that I also found as my first mentor. And I again just going there every day. It was a sense of family, a sense of the village and our community that really supports one another. And this is really where I recognize the power of beauty and barbershops, being a young kid. And so that in itself really gave the inspiration for the Confess Project today, because of going there every day and just seeing the empowerment, hearing stories of people overcoming, whether they were facing a bad relationship or something going on with their family member, or all the way from people graduating college or uh, children going, first day of school. Everything you could imagine. We heard it. We was a part of that journey in some kind of way because those conversations are shared every day. And so that's really how the work really blossomed, because me finding that mentorship to those empowering stories and really watching my aunt and those stylists and barbers lift people up and everyday people that was just trying to make it.
You know what else is cool about this? Is that this is your lived personal experience. And so, just so everybody's following the story, when you were born, your mother was in jail and your dad was also incarcerated. And so, the options for you, and I don't know if you know this about me, but I was a legal aid attorney in New York City, working for legal aid, doing criminal defense work. The options are basically foster care unless a family member steps up. And so your aunt steps up, she drives up from Arkansas, she picks you up in Newark, and
Yep.
she brings you back. And she happens to be an entrepreneur who
Yep.
is working as a beautician in a black owned beauty and barber shop. And can you also explain for people listening, either in the United States or in the 194 countries where this show is syndicated, how important a black owned barber and beauty shop is in the black community when you think about it from a historical, a cultural perspective? That it's not only your lived experience, but for many communities, black owned barbershops and beauty shops also have historically been a gathering place, been where people organize for civil rights. So, can you talk a little bit about how your personal experience also dovetails with the lived experience of so many black Americans?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you said it, Mel, as black barbershops and salons really was engulfed, in the civil rights era. And we think about, the Malden brothers, and we think about, the NAACP organizing for voters' rights. All of those um, intersections played a role in barbershop. We also think about as far back as barbers were seen as doctors and as caretakers in our communities. As even further back as just thinking about the work that's been done and economically in barbershop. So it's one of the few places that the folks can gain generational wealth by owning their barber or beauty salon. And so I think about like my aunt, and for years her having her beauty shop, and what that was able to afford in our life. And they also built a beauty shop in the back of our house as well. So it was one at home and one away. So you can imagine it was a mini day that I faced, sharing breakfast, but also smelling the fumes of chemicals from hair.
Yeah.
So it was a part of our life, and this was very common. Is that people would even have this at home, and they would also travel. It's just a huge part of how our lifestyles looked, and so, but all the way up to now, it's recognized as it's a hub for lifestyle. Just thinking about young people going to the same barber, or young ladies seeing the same stylist for years, from the age of 5 to their 20, depending on the different caveats in life. So it's a huge part of our lifestyle, professional lifestyle in so many ways. And it's the only place outside of church where you have homeless neighbors and principals and entrepreneurs in the same place, And I'll imagine classes that can gather in one place at the same time, and that's very uncommon in many places that we can here in society. So,
It's an important piece to why I think the Confess Project has is not only such a genius idea, but that it is making such an extraordinary difference. I read that for every 1,000 barbers and beauticians that you train in the Confess Project to be frontline mental health advocates, you are reaching 1 million people that come in and out of these shops and sit in these chairs. And so, I want to go back a little bit though, because your mission, Lorenzo, is to really provide access to mental health services and support to communities where there is not a lot of access. Only 4% of therapists that are trained and licensed are Black. And you are also not only trying to close this accessibility gap, but you're also trying to close, or I should probably say open up, vulnerability in communities and with people who feel like therapy is a weakness. And this gets to the point of like it is hard to get through to somebody who's struggling when you have no freaking clue what their lived experience is, because you are a different race or a different socioeconomic class. And it's easier to get through to somebody when you have a lived experience that you can authentically connect with. And so what you're highlighting here in your experience, Lorenzo, is you were seeing the impact that it has on the Black patient population when only 4% of trained and licensed mental health professionals are Black. That if you don't see yourself represented by the very people that are trying to help you, how on earth could the people that are trying to help you get better understand what the fuck you're going through? And so that's what you started to see day in and day out. That's what you felt.
yeah, and I believe a lot of times when we don't trust people that most of the time if it's people that we feel like they don't, resonate with our life experiences, that may not look like who we are or come from where we are, that can create a barrier to access to mental health services in general. But I think it's even a step further when sometimes the compassion and the just humanity is not present in regards of how we connect with people about how they feel. And so I think that, that in itself can create distrust. Also, I think just historically, there are just, there's many challenges in, communities of color and how we don't trust, white medical providers, or we may not trust people with, that's an authority, right? And so these things can really create a ladder of distrust for people getting services and getting the help that they need, because some of it is tied to hurt and anguish that's been kind of boiling over years to come.
I cannot wait to introduce you to Lorenzo Lewis. He came up with this wildly creative and innovative way to deliver free mental health services to millions of people.